Hello, my name is Justin DeClue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're about to rock and roll, shake those hips, because we're talking about Elvis working with good directors?
Auteurs?
Not
even?
auteurs.
Oh, sometimes auteurs.
Would you call Michael Curtiz an auteur? Isn't like the whole thing is like I'm the anti-auteurist.
You're right. Good directors.
Mm-hmm.
But let's call them auteurs anyway, because I like that word.
Yeah, I mean, Don Siegel and Phil Karlson, they are like studio guys, if you will.
And by the way, a special technical advisor on this episode, Colonel Tom Parker.
That's right.
Big credit.
Hello, it's me.
Some would
Colonel
call him
Tom
the
Parker.
villain of this here story, wouldn't they? So I want to tell you something about Elvis, okay?
Yes.
I have in my day interviewed no less than 5 Elvis tribute artists. Not all at once, but just various times over the years.
Now, is it because you have a fascination with it? Is it the beat that you're on? You are assigned like, get the Elvis guy in here.
I mean, none of them lately. Back when I was at journalism school, I visited the home of no less than Gene DiNapoli. That name perhaps will mean nothing to you, but great Elvis, not Elvis impersonators, Elvis tribute artists.
For legal reasons,
That's right.
we need to call it a tribute artist.
Back when I was a journalist in rural Ontario, I interviewed a, township counselor, not because of this, but he was an Elvis tribute artist, in his off hours. One thing I can tell you about Elvis tribute artists, they all are convinced that late Elvis is the best one because he had real soul.
Wow.
Right? It's like, the kids, the young girls, they like him when he's swinging his
Like
hips.
charismatic
But-
and like present.
But when he's older and he's singing with a soul in his heart, or
Now,
whatever.
when I think of Elvis, I think of Will Sloan, Elvis fan number one, right?
And you know what else they tell you? They're all very eager to tell you that he was not racist. they say that Elvis stole black music, but actually he gave lots of opportunities to black artists and this and that, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just reporting what they tell me.
As Elvis fan number one.
As Elvis fan number one, I love Hound Dog.
Yes.
There's that one.
Jailhouse Rock.
Yeah, that one too. Blue Christmas. Yeah, that's probably when I will listen to an Elvis record. Is like just at Christmas for a laugh.
So what I was setting Will up is that neither me or Will, I would say, are Elvis heads, if you will.
No, and nothing against him. He's fine.
You're either a Beatles guy or an Elvis guy.
Thank you, Quentin.
Yes.
Yes.
No one could see me really getting into character there. That added to the performance.
But I would be a Beatles guy in that
absolutely.
dichotomy, yes. And, some of it is, I'd rather listen to Little Richard. But then also, Elvis is so iconic. If Andy Warhol drew you in the 60s, it can start to become hard to connect with.
But you don't think that the Beatles are also as iconic as Elvis?
I don't know, maybe because some of them are still alive, but
once they die, you're throwing all those Beatles records into the trash.
I see the Andy Warhol silkscreen more than I see like the guy who swinging his hips on TV induced a mass orgasm in the United States.
And I don't want to insult anybody, but I'll just say as a teenager, I listened to Elvis and I listened to the Beatles. And I continued listening to the Beatles, and Elvis was kind of put aside.
But respect to Elvis.
Respect?
If you're listening to this because you searched
Love
the name
Elvis.
please know that we're coming to this episode actually as Elvis Curious. We want to understand him more.
Yes, absolutely. Especially his sprawling film career, which we have talked about before when we did his favorite director, Norman Taurog.
So Elvis's movies, even a lot of the Elvis fans will say, not very good.
And he made so many of them.
Throughout the 60s, movie after movie that were, they were potboilers. They played for kids and for teenagers.
Drive in and you could make out with your favorite guy or gal inside the car as they played like white noise in the background.
Yeah, exactly. And, us, whenever we've gone to the drive-in, I think we've had a better understanding of what these movies were. It's like, they're just meant to be a pleasant
time in the background. Yeah. I mean, we haven't gone to an Elvis marathon at the drive-in.
I would sooner jump off a bridge than do that, but sure.
Wait, but it's all on shimmering 35 millimeter film, Will.
But here is something. I mean, you all know about Elvis Presley. 1953, he cut his first 2 songs, at Sun Records. By 1956, he's a star.
Sorry,
he's
I'm putting
white.
Country music, like generic library stuff behind the audio that you're talking about right now.
He's on TV. He's on the Ed Sullivan Show. He's swinging his hips.
All right, so I showed that clip of one of his first appearances. He looks 45 years old and like Jay Leno in those clips.
Yeah, well, sooner or later, I don't know what they did to his face. But
they like cut half of it off, it seems.
I mean, you know what I liked about the Baz Luhrmann movie is that it really makes that hip swinging thing come alive, because Elvis has become so ossified, and he became ossified like within 2 years of becoming famous as well. Like that Baz Luhrmann figured out a way to be like, no, you need to understand how
it's like electricity jumping from his hips.
it's like, we are going to put that camera right in his pelvis, and then you are going to see the women in the audience going fucking ape shit over this, and you will understand. But I came to this week hoping to understand a little more, because I think it's safe to say that period when he was like the most electrifying thing on earth, not saying he wasn't good after that, but it was brief. And then they cut his hair and he went to the army, and
he came back and he's like, I'll not be standing for any of these musical numbers, please.
yeah I'll sit on a bench here at the Clam Bake and I'll sing a song that's like, well, you got a gal and you're doing the twist and
The Clam Bake.
yeah. Hey, you got a clam, do the clam.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's dancing, but Elvis is just sitting in his chair.
Yeah.
Strumming along. All right, so let's jump all the way back to his first few film roles, like Love Me Tender, Loving You, Jailhouse Rock. This is Elvis, you would say, a little bit dangerous. Like Jailhouse Rock, which I watched before recording this, you get Elvis arrogant. Like there's a little bit of, oh, is he going to do something here?
Well, Elvis's filmography, one of the things that's interesting about it is I don't think there's a single one that has quite become canonical. Like the closest is maybe Jailhouse Rock.
Jailhouse Rock, yeah.
Like that's the one that I think's in the American Film Registry, but it's almost there symbolically.
And what's funny about Jailhouse Rock is it does something that not many Elvis films do, which is people remember it because of that kind of very expressionist set that he sings a song on.
That's right.
In the context of the movie, he's doing that for a TV show. It's not like the film is breaking the reality to have like a MGM style musical number. It's because Elvis didn't ever really do that.
But like the Beatles with A Hard Day's Night, that's a movie that's become a classic on its own merits. Even Martin and Lewis, who were an Elvis-like phenomenon right before him, artists and models, you can say, well, that's the one.
Well, you know why? It's a little something called The Director. Because you know who directed Jailhouse Rock? A man who directed 139 films, Richard Thorpe. And you may be going, who? Exactly. First on Letterboxd, most popular, Jailhouse Rock. Second, Ivanhoe. Third, The Thin Man Goes Home. Fourth, Fun in Acapulco.
That's Elvis, Fun in Acapulco.
Fun in Acapulco. Night Must Fall, Double Wedding, Knights of the Round. I have not heard of any of these movies. And I know people may be listening being like, of course, don't you know Tarzan Escapes and Tarzan's New York Adventure and Tarzan's Secret Treasure? You know what? Maybe they're great, but I think it's very...
They're not Tarzan the Ape Man, though, are they?
No.
He directed... No, that guy directed like Son of the Thin Man. He didn't direct The Thin Man.
No. These are all directors that...
Sorry, The Thin Man Goes Home. The Important Cinema Club fact check department regrets the error.
Like, you'd see their names on like How the West Was Won. It's like, one of those directors, eh?
Yeah.
But, right after Jailhouse Rock, I don't know how it happened, but they got the top studio guy to make an Elvis picture, Mr. Michael Curtiz, Casablanca himself.
Right. So Elvis was under contract with Hal Wallace, who began at Warner Brothers, was a super producer there, then went out as an independent. He made a number of different star vehicles, as an independent producer, but he really struck gold with Martin and Lewis. He signed them, and for about 7 or 8 years at the height of their stardom in the 1950s, they were a license to print money. Well, in 1956, Martin and Lewis broke up.
I got two guys for you. Sammy Petrillo.
Yeah. But that very same year, Elvis popped. That was the year he became supernova. So Hal Wallace hooked up with Colonel Tom Parker with King Creole from 1958, which is, I think, generally regarded as
his best one.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. They got Michael Curtiz, the director of Casablanca, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Yankee Doodle Dandy, countless other old Hollywood classics. This is not typically ranked as one of his best movies, but I do think this movie is an excellent illustration of what a really capable hand can do.
Yes, that what is Elvis's attraction as a persona? Even beyond the music itself, what are people seeing in Elvis, even in these like brief appearances on television? And can someone like Curtiz squeeze it out of him as a performer? And I gotta say, he gets it. You see this movie and you go, oh wow, this is, a young, almost angry, what is he gonna do next, complicated, teenage-ish individual on screen, and I can't wait to see what he does, and hopefully he doesn't just clamp down any of that charisma until it's a dull, bland hum.
So King Creole, 1958, went in with no expectations at all. I really liked this movie. I was kind of surprised how much I liked this movie. This is a superior melodrama, I think. Beautifully atmospheric.
Oh, that black and white cinematography does so much for Elvis.
Yeah, and what Curtiz and his crew are doing with the New Orleans setting, just the way they move the camera around those bars.
Curtiz as a director, people would always say that he's not a showy director, but he knows how to move the camera to accentuate a point. To the first time you see Elvis on stage in this movie, the film does this very smart thing where it keeps it far away for a long time.
That's right.
Like you're an audience member that's witnessing the performance.
And as it starts, there are two other characters in the foreground. So he's keeping the drama of the situation in mind as well.
And it even at one point pans over to watch somebody kind of come into the bar just to let you know the reality of what's going on around Elvis, and also linking it all up. So when finally he becomes much more confident as a performer, then we cut into a close-up of him, so you get it, boom, right there on the big screen.
So to put it briefly, the plot of this movie is Elvis is a juvenile delinquent, basically.
He wants to be a good kid, though.
Yeah, he's a troubled kid whose mother passed away and whose family has moved to the Big Easy.
And his dad's a huge coward.
That's right. And so he's working, he works at this den run by the local mobster played by, yes, Walter Matthau.
A young Walter Matthau? Possibly?
A younger Walter
Yes.
Matthau. And by the way, I love Elvis and Walter Matthau together because they are two different kinds of underplayers. And together, I don't know, there's just something about the way that they both the low rumble of both of their performances.
Well, Walter Matthau feels like a genuine threat, which past this point you rarely see in Elvis pictures. And I think one of the brilliant moves this movie makes is right from the get-go, they're like, Elvis, can you let some hair kind of just be loose on the top of your head?
So 2 weeks after this movie ended production, he went into the army.
Yeah, and they gave him a haircut.
So they cut his hair 2 weeks after this.
Yep.
You were getting the last of prime era Elvis here. And in the first 2 minutes of this movie, I thought, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Or I get it more than I used to. Because there's that scene of him, he's just on the balcony at his little tenement apartment. And Curtiz really emphasizes just the sort of physicality of him, just the way his body, his what's the word I'm looking for? His big meaty body looks there, and the hair is disheveled. There's this I don't know, freshly fucked look to him, basically.
I mean, you know what I mean? In this movie, Elvis is just steps away from sleeping on a first date with a woman that he picks up.
Oh my
and you know
goodness.
what? You buy it in the movie too.
But, he seems sweaty. He seems like he's been poured into his clothes. And
he's got that nervous energy that all the young stars that's what makes them stars, especially in this particular point in time.
And okay, so him and Matthau are two different kinds of underplayers. Matthau, there's a sort of coiled energy of I'm saying this very wryly and in an understated way because I could kill you right now, but I don't have to because there are hidden depths there. With Elvis, I feel like there's an ambiguity about to what extent there are hidden depths. And that's something I think that's interesting in his performance. So maybe it's an easier hack to compare him to James Dean or Marlon Brando at this time.
I mean, that's exactly what he's doing though.
Well, yeah. And apparently Elvis himself, who took very seriously his acting and wanted to do better, he wanted to study under Stella Adler. So he was very influenced by that mumbly naturalistic acting that the Method guys were doing. There's something about that ambition, but also the fact that he himself is he's very young, he's very raw and unformed on screen. And it's like, who is there? How much is there? It's uncertain.
What's funny about Elvis in this film is that kind of performance is not something you would associate with Michael Curtiz, who's like a studio guy who's like, all right, just give me the performance. Let's get through it. I am just a well-oiled machine. But Elvis gets to be that nervy little ball of energy in this that, you never know which direction he's going to go. Is he going to team up with teenager Vic Morrow in this movie?
So, what did Michael Curtiz contribute to this movie? I mean, I've got a great biography here, The Biography of Michael Curtiz by Alan K. Rode. And it talks about how, like, the production of the movie is maybe not a battle of wills, but definitely a collaboration of energies between Hal Wallace, Michael Curtiz, and Colonel Tom Parker. And in most movies, Curtiz would have been a fairly domineering, hands-on director.
He was a very domineering as a filmmaker throughout his career.
But Hal Wallace said to him, listen, you're treating Elvis with kid gloves, which was probably the correct way to direct him. So Rode here writes, Curtiz girded himself to endure a rock and roll version of Errol Flynn at his worst. Instead, he encountered a polite young man who was the first one on the set at 7:30 a.m. with all his lines memorized. When Curtiz told him he would sing 3 ballads in the film without his usual twists and turns, Elvis simply nodded and said, "You're the boss, Mr. Curtiz." Curtiz was impressed by the neophyte's initial tests on a closed set. He said, instead of a gyrating rock and roller, I was watching a natural, unactory actor, underplaying his role because he knew none of the tricks of the trade. Curtiz was exceedingly gentle with Elvis, still a shy country boy who would make occasional Bible references. He provided the 21-year-old with a minimum amount of direction and allowed him to exercise his own initiative. Elvis responded enthusiastically to Curtiz. So one of the things that Curtiz was able to do, catching Elvis early in his career, was sort of instinctively understand the raw materials that he was working with. And yes, Hal Wallace told him to treat him with kid gloves, but he also knew to he knew what was there and he knew to give it space. And as a result, he got one of the best performances from Elvis. I say one of because we also watched Flaming Star.
So Colonel Tom Parker and Hal Wallace, they wanted Elvis to just sing songs in movies. Mm-hmm. They wanted it as an advertising mechanism and nothing more. Elvis wanted to act. He wanted to be an actor, like you mentioned, studying with the greats. And that wasn't an opportunity that was very present other than in Flaming Star, directed by Don Siegel. Well, who's Don Siegel, for people who may not know?
Don Siegel is, well, to me, and probably to you as well, he's one of the quintessential, termite artists. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who worked in the studios making, let's say, B-plus movies for years and years, became an old hand, best remembered today as maybe Clint Eastwood's house director.
That's right. Dirty Harry, Escape from Alcatraz. He also directed the legendary Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And speaking of Walter Matthau, the great Charlie Varick.
Yeah, a guy who is Riot on Cell Block 11, another great frickin' movie.
The original version of The Killers as well.
A great action director, a really pacey director, but also somebody incredible with atmosphere, just a great storyteller. I mean, this movie, Flaming Star, beautifully shot, obviously. All these beautiful, Monument Valley landscapes and such. But it feels like a Don Siegel movie, and maybe this is me just, projecting onto the movie, but I don't think so. It feels like a Don Siegel movie in that it is socially conscious. It's engaged with the world around it, much like his movies often are. I mean, Don Siegel's remembered for Dirty Harry, but he was basically a liberal filmmaker. Mm-hmm. Riot and Cell Block 11 being, the quintessential example of this. This movie's 1960, so 2 years after King Creole. The domestication of Elvis has begun, but this movie...
This is the dying gasp of can we get something else out of Elvis? And Don Siegel said in his biography that, he was given the script and he's like, this doesn't work. We need to cut the songs out. We need to restructure this. He actually asked the leading lady to be recast. Originally, it was Barbara Steele of Italian Gothic horror movie fame. And move Don Siegel does that's interesting is that for a lot of the running time, he kind of backgrounds Elvis into the community that you're seeing on screen, that he's part of an ensemble as opposed to the main central figure that everything is being viewed through, like in King Creole.
This sounds very hack and very like Time magazine, history of the 1950s and such. But when you think of the changes that were happening in society in the 1950s, when you were thinking of like the national mood in the 1950s, Elvis going on the Ed Sullivan Show and swinging his hips, everything that he represented in like youth culture, in sexual politics, he's one of the quintessential figures of that generation.
Well, I'm going to take him down a peg. I'm going to bring out a hound dog on stage and make him sing and dance in front of that.
But this movie, which is basically a revisionist Western, I think is using him.
Yeah, it's a revisionist Western, as you were saying, like using Elvis as the figure to get into it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like he is a figure who embodies, like, extra textually, he embodies change. He embodies the generation gap.
But let's all have white people play the indigenous figures, though.
Yeah, I mean, this movie politically, there are some problematic elements to it.
What did you think of the movie overall, though? Like, I found it fine.
I kind of loved it, honestly.
Really?
I thought it was really good. So I'll tell the folks
what it's about.
Yeah, so Elvis is the mixed race son of a ranching family. His father is white, his mother is indigenous. He and his family are accepted in the community until the tribe starts attacking, until the tribe starts trying to take their land back. And so he then finds himself caught between these two worlds. The family is increasingly shunned and ostracized by the white community, but then the indigenous community wants him wholeheartedly or not at all. Elvis, as we said, a natural underplayer, keeps a lot close to the vest in this movie. And I think there's a kind of ambiguity with Elvis of, maybe this is me like reading him in bad faith, but because he made so many bad movies and because he's like such a star persona, that like underplayed, like lip, that
snarled.
Yeah, that the snarl he does the lip thing. Like you wonder how much is there, but but like he keeps a lot close to the vest in this movie. Like it's a very internalized performance, like the pain that he feels.
And it's an Elvis movie. And like I said, when we first started talking about this, like Elvis is at the background of the film a lot for the first half. So you're like, all right, when is he going to make the decision? How is he going to move forward with this? And the tension is between like the white people and like, the city and the family and Elvis having to make a decision here. What I found a little bit unsatisfying is that a lot of it happens off screen. That like, especially like basically the coda of the movie, which is the flaming star is what you go towards when you die. That happens off screen and Elvis comes back and he's like, well, I'm dying now, so goodbye.
Yeah, I do hear that, although I do think Elvis's last scene in the movie,
it's very good.
Like
yes.
he really sells it, and there's a powerful, I don't know, aura that he radiates throughout this movie.
You know what? I think I would have liked it more if it was in black and white.
Yeah.
And because I feel like it even starts with like, I don't remember the exact term, but like Vista color, like you're watching a big movie up on screen. And maybe it's just that like, that creates a lack of tension in what we're seeing on screen. And that would also distract me probably from all the red face that you see on screen throughout.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's unfortunate, to say the least.
I mean, Don Siegel is working with what he has available to him. He said that like there was a scene where Elvis has to mourn over someone that has passed away and that Elvis was a little nervous. And Don Siegel actually said, okay, we're going to put it at the end of the shoot so you have time to rehearse and get ready for it. And then when you finally do it, you can feel comfortable about the scene. And Elvis was very thankful about that and gave it his all when that scene came up. So that just shows this is not a guy that's a musician forced into being into these movies. This is a guy that wants to be an actor, has an energy there, and wants to deliver as much as he can, which makes it unfortunate the Flaming Star is basically like, all right, Elvis as an actor is not interesting anymore.
I mean, I think one can imagine all the pressure that he was under, like in a movie like this, which is a real movie that has things on its mind.
Where he sings like no songs, basically.
Yeah.
A little bit. He picks up a guitar.
Virtually no songs. Nevertheless, I'm sure he was beholden to his star persona, right?
Yeah.
And these first two movies, like King Creole and Flaming Star, are both very like smart about the way they incorporate his star persona into the context of a real movie, and they allow him to like find interesting shades in that persona. I mean, it would be nice if there was a movie where he was able to like completely bust free from that. Like,
just the films like Flaming Star is probably one of the atypical ones. Later on, there's one where they actually tried to make him into a Clint Eastwood type, like squinty and like spaghetti Western-esque, but they just got bad directors and bad scripts. Like Elvis can't break free of that, especially that far into his career.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, a few weeks ago, or whenever we did the Norman Torog episode, we talked
That was
about
months ago.
Oh God, I mean,
Norman Torog is always on your mind, so I understand that it feels just like yesterday.
I mean, he directed 8 or 9 Elvis movies, and we watched Blue Hawaii for that, which I'm sure you've mostly forgotten. I've mostly forgotten it, but it's just one of those things like, yeah, you know, Elvis is on the island, and there are all these girls who want him, and there's the mother. I forgot what happens.
Yeah, it's real boring. Didn't like it very much. And if you look at lists of best Elvis movies, Blue Hawaii is on that list, which just goes to show you the rest of the filmography of one of the most charismatic singers of all time.
But you read about Michael Curtiz when he was making King Creole, and he was involved actively in every step of the production. He was working on the script. The script was an adaptation of a book, and he was thinking, what are the ways that we can make this work on the screen? He was working closely with Elvis and all the other actors to figure out how to adapt them to the material. With Norman Torog...
Do we got 75, 80 minutes? Is it a movie? Cut, we're printed, we're done.
Norman Torog delivers the assignment, but he's never inspired.
Mm-mm. And Elvis would never work with any great directors again, except a little man named Phil Karlson in a movie called Kid Galahad. Interestingly, a remake of a Michael Curtiz film.
So Phil Karlson, there are 2 Phil Karlsons. Well,
Yes.
there are many Phil Karlsons, but for our purposes, there's the guy who made The Phoenix City Story, Kansas City Confidential, Framed, Scandal Sheet, 99 River Street.
All of them great.
Even Walking Tall. Mm-hmm. A two-fisted, like tough, violent, upsetting action and noir director.
Within the studio system, which Phil Karlson was working in, he would jump as an independent here or there. There were no filmmakers that like their work felt more immediate than film. Like you watch stuff like Phoenix City Story and Kansas City Confidential, and that's like punching you in the face watching those motion pictures.
Or like I think of the scene in Walking Tall near the end where Joe Don Baker's out for a ride with his wife, and it's like she gets shot in the head by the villains. And Phil Karlson was the kind of director who's like, you're going to see a close-up of that head getting fucking blown up.
But you know what? Phil Karlson clearly had bills to pay.
Well, Phil Karlson started on Poverty Row. He made Bowery Boys movies. He made Charlie Chan movies. Some of them are okay.
We've done an episode on Phil Karlson, I believe.
Yeah.
So if people want more information about that, check it out. And what we're trying to get to is Phil Karlson making some of the most extreme films out there in the studio system, also made some of the most boring movies ever.
Well, he made The Wrecking Crew with Dean Martin, The Silencers as well. And then there's this movie, Kid Galahad, which like we're in full we've given up mode now.
And it's not even that long after Flaming Star for Elvis.
So I'll say there are some good things in this movie. Well, I'll start by saying that Elvis in this movie has, come back from the service and he falls into a boxing career. And, there's a corrupt manager and the good thing in the movie is he has a trainer played by Charles Bronson.
Charles Bronson, great in this movie.
A very emotive Charles Bronson, actually.
He was very emotive earlier on in his career before his kind of persona got tamped down.
And I like these Elvis movies that have strong supporting casts. Mm-hmm. Like Elvis is frankly a bit of a lug in this movie.
Yes.
So like when you have when he's surrounded by people who are really charismatic, like not only do they like prop him up, but I also think they are an interesting counterpoint to him. Like their energies radiate off of his solemn energy pretty well.
Now, my main issue with this film is that, again, it's very, very dull.
There's nothing to look at.
There's no tension. We spend so much time in this like nondescript like wooden mansion where everyone's wearing like nice sweaters and things like that. And I'm like,
it's just the beats. There are no surprises.
No, nothing. Like Elvis barely stands in this movie to sing his songs. So he's like, all right, everybody gather around. Let me play the guitar.
Well, imagine the Phil Karlson who made the Phoenix City Story directing like the boxing scenes in this. Like what happened to that guy?
I mean, he would come back. He would make more kind of like immediate films after this. But like, is it just, Tom Parker being like, let's, we've tasted Norman Torog at this point.
Well, this movie has
Follow That Dream and Blue Hawaii.
This movie has a lot of songs. It also has like the visual style that those 60s Elvis movies have, where it's like very bright, very pastel colors, very pleasant to look at.
If you had told me this was directed by Norman Torog, I would have been, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Like there is no Phil Karlson touch here to be found. Maybe one moment where someone gets their hands broken.
Yes.
That That is the only kind of like Phil Karlson squeezing it in early on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're just projecting that onto the movie, though.
Bro, but you see the guy's hands and he's like, oh,
That's true.
they busted up my hands.
That's true. That's like when Lucio Fulci gives you a scene of a dismemberment in an otherwise
like Italian sex comedy or something like that. Phil Karlson screaming to escape. But you know what? I'm sure he made a fine paycheck on this movie.
But what do you think of Elvis in this movie? Because his performance, like, it's a difference more of degree than kind from his performances in the other movies, but it is also night and day, right?
You know, what's depressing about this is that you can imagine a Phil Karlson Elvis boxing movie with Elvis in that main role. Oh. And like, this is not what that is.
Well, okay, but for that, you would have had to have seen Elvis sweat.
Yes.
You would have,
and you don't want to see him sweating. He's tanned. He looks good.
He would have had to have looked ugly.
Yes, and like get like beaten up, get his hair mussed when he fights. And
What
you get
is
none
it?
of that.
What is it with that hair? Like, there's something, there's ideological significance in that hair. That first shot of King Creole where he comes out on the balcony and the hair's all mussed up and it's like greasy and sweaty, like that means something. But then he comes back from the war. He comes back from the army and combat.
No, he did not.
But and all of a sudden his hair is so dry cleaned and it looks like you could
you shoot bullets off of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that is symbolic of something.
And I wonder, was Elvis just didn't want to try in this one?
Well, I think he obviously became complacent.
The script has no tension at all. You can imagine Elvis, he's out of town, he comes back, maybe he's got nothing and he's desperate and he needs this boxing. No, there's no tension in this movie at all, really.
Well, it's just so formulaic. It's just all the beats,
Yeah, at the end he wins. That's it. It's not the setup or anything like that.
But hey, 1968, he came back, had the comeback tour. I'm just saying the facts that everyone knows.
Wait. Aren't we going to talk about, you know what? There's one movie people like to list as the best Elvis. I've never seen it. Viva Las Vegas with Anne Margaret.
So I've seen a bit of that, on a bar TV. So I've seen that it looks kind of cool at times. The dance scenes look kind of neat. We should have watched that one. Who directed that one?
That one was directed by George Sidney, who did Bye Bye Birdie. So he was like a musical person.
Oh, and Anchor's Away with Gene Kelly.
Kiss Me, Kate.
The Great Ziegfeld.
Yeah.
Okay, this guy I think would fall under the category of real director.
Maybe we had one more Elvis film we had to crawl through. And if we do that one, though, we have to punish ourselves with Tickle Me, Paradise Hawaiian Style, Kissing Cousins.
Spin Out, his race car movie.
Look at this one, Roustabout.
Oh, man.
I mean, is there more Elvis to explore? I would say no.
I've had my fill for the time being, but I have left this experiment, getting Elvis a bit more and also wishing that a little bit more of that potential was explored.
The one that I mentioned earlier that was spaghetti western was 1969's Charo, where they gave Elvis a beard. But, as tempting as that looks, everybody who watches it is like, it just doesn't really work. Even though it was directed by Charles Marquis Warren, who is he directed a lot of trash. Unknown Terror, Back from the Dead, Arrowhead. That's all right, what director is in front of the studio we can pick to make this picture? I don't know, that guy? Elvis just needed better directors to work with. And it's a real shame that in his lifetime, he was never able to get that, because I feel like there is a great Elvis filmography that could have existed, and we don't have it.
But if you boil it down to the top 2 or 3, there's some good stuff there.
King Creole.
And you know what? Elvis, his legacy is ruined.
And we did it.
He obviously contributed nothing.
Now, is there an episode in watching the old Elvis performances?
Like after the movies?
Yes, after the movies. Because people say there's an electricity there. Is that captured on screen?
As my old friend on the Wellesley Township Council said, the kids like young Elvis, but the old Elvis, he had the soul.
He had the soul. We weren't watching the soul. We were watching the teenager, if you will.
Can I also say, my last bit of insight about Elvis tribute artists is it is harder than ever to be one, because back in the 70s, there wasn't all that much readily available footage. By which I mean, you couldn't just go to the store. You couldn't go online.
You just be like, hey. And you're there's an Elvis imitator.
Right. You saw Viva Las Vegas on TV.
Yeah.
But now...
on a bar TV.
Now, you can hear hundreds of concerts. You can hear... You
can watch his first, show up on TV, on YouTube.
So if you want to become an Elvis tribute artist right now, and I know you do...
Do you want to be an Elvis tribute artist? Is that why you interviewed so many of them, Will?
Yes, maybe that was my thwarted ambition.
Talking about like, listen, it used to be easy back in the day, but if you want to do it now, it's more difficult.
I think I came to respect the art a lot more from talking to them. But yes, I wish I found my Colonel Parker. What can I say?
Did you ever see any of those tribute artists you interviewed perform?
No. I would love to see Gene DiNapoli, though. Yeah.
Well, he must be getting on in years now, right?
I better hurry up.
All right, everybody, get your Gene DiNapoli tickets now before it's too late. So, as per usual, weekend... Next week, the Gene DiNapoli filmography. So, as per usual, you can send us emails at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. And our first letter is from Benjamin, and he goes, "Hey, Justin and Will, quick question. I've noticed that many actors we regard as household names really only have 2 or 3 defining roles with a litany of forgotten movies behind them. Kurt Russell, for example, really only has the Carpenter movies to back up his 80s action guy status he enjoys today. Same things could be said for actors like Jeff Goldblum and Burt Reynolds, who before 1985 maybe have a maximum of 3 roles people readily remember."
Let's take it back even further. Humphrey Bogart. What movies are people still watching? Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon. And then after that, you get into classic film guy stuff. I mean, it happens with everyone.
If we dare to besmirch any of those movies, people will send us angry emails.
Hey, Humphrey Bogart's made a million movies I like. I'm just saying that for the phenomenon you're describing happens to everyone.
Jim Carrey, Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, The Mask. I'm out. Oh no.
Horton Hears a Who.
Have you seen that one?
Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Yes. Who am I kidding? This is a gag, people. I can say Jim Carrey's filmography from the beginning. Copper Mountain, Rubberface.
Yeah, that's right. But listen, we're freaks. Listen, I'm just Googled. I went to Letterboxd and I looked up Judy Garland. Okay, who's more famous than Judy Garland? Most popular movie.
Wizard of Oz.
Obviously.
Me in St. Louis.
Number 2. And what's number 3? Judgment at Nuremberg.
Judgment at Nuremberg.
And what's number 4? A Star is Born.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay, let's say those are 4 classics everyone knows.
Judy Garland was in many more movies than
Number
that.
5, The Pirate. Have you seen The Pirate?
It's the Vincent Minnelli.
Yes. So now we're getting into classic film guy stuff.
Okay, yeah. You only get 3 or 4.
This happens to everyone.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily Kurt Russell's fault.
But the letter continues. On the flip side, you can have an extremely popular and well-known movie like Full Metal Jacket where none of the leads go on to star status. I would say Mr. Matthew Modine, star of Cutthroat Island. We all know him from that movie, right?
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, so no, they were not big stars in the way that the other people you mentioned.
But that is cool. Like if you're in one of those movies, like if you were lucky enough to be in Full Metal Jacket,
you can eat off of that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
Mr. Matthew Modine has been doing.
Yeah, I would.
He's like, I'm republishing the journals I wrote during the making of Full Metal Jacket.
You know what I find depressing sometimes is if you go to a convention and you see like, I don't know, whatever, stars are there and they'll have a banner behind them that says like their top 3 movies on it.
Yeah.
And usually number 1 will be like, oh, it's Ghostbusters. I don't know. It's like the biggest movie ever. Mm-hmm. And then number 3 is like Congo. Okay, I'm talking about Ernie Hudson, but
yeah.
you know what I mean. Like,
oh, how dare you roast Ernie that?
Sorry, I love Ernie Hudson. If it were up to me, he would be the biggest star in the world.
Mm-hmm. Throw Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd into the bin. It's just Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, and Ernie Hudson right up there on the big screen.
Yeah, but
they're all back.
I think there's something liberating about this, frankly. I think there's something liberating about the fact that like you can have the most storied career. You can be, well, hey, Errol Flynn. Like, what do people remember? They remember the Adventures of Robin Hood, maybe Captain Blood.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, you can be the most famous person ever, and most of your stuff gets forgotten by most people, and that's great. That's liberating.
You go into work. Do you remember every day that you worked at like a 9-to-5 job and the adventures that happened that day, or breaking them up into month? No, you don't.
No, just keep working, and also all those movies.
Keep working.
All those movies are still available. Like
you can go and find them.
Yeah, and like if you love Errol Flynn, you can go find those movies, and they still exist.
Mm-hmm. Turn on the Criterion Channel, and maybe they'll play it. But the ones that aren't available, we're going to complain about it because we want them to be out there.
That's right.
And the letter has one last point. Would you guys say that this star status was something mostly cooked up by publicists, or is there genuinely something natural to those actors' lasting fame and celebrity? This question is inspired by one Glenn Powell, who I feel they're trying very hard to make happen. Thanks.
Well, there are a lot of stars who, I don't know, look up the direct-to-video Randall Emmett or Bruce Willis movies, and in their supporting cast, they are littered with people who they tried to make a star 10,
and they didn't work. They were in a
ago.
Twilight movie, and then they're doomed to be there now.
All due respect to them. Good for them. They're working actors. That's great. But somebody like Elvis, I don't know, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like he became iconic, and at a certain point, like if you become iconic, that you know, and
it happens.
It happens, and it's real. But like Elvis also, like all those movies that he made in the 60s were all hits, or most of them were hits, and you know, nobody watches them anymore.
Nope, not at all. Like I said last week, if you look at the Letterboxd most popular, The Movie Orgy is on the top line, which is the compilation film that Joe Dante made that was not available until only a couple of years ago.
We mentioned Martin and Lewis, like their movie, I think.
Oh man, those movies have completely nobody watches
like
them.
Their movie That's My Boy came out the same year as Singin' in the Rain, and it made like twice as much money, and you know, like probably has 100 logs on Letterboxd. you know,
but some movies, they existed in their moment. They're still available.
That's right.
But you know,
they're interesting.
We only have so much space in our brain.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's just so much, you know, there's so much in the world. Like there are new movies every day.
Yep. And they're starring Glenn Powell, and we need to see them.
And you know, Glenn Powell, time will prove.
Yep.
You know,
will he be starring in a Steven Seagal DTV film later down the line? Maybe. But you know, when he was in that Top Gun film, I'm like, that guy's charismatic. He's fun to hang around with. Like, that's it.
And that's what's great. Like those Elvis movies, they still exist. And if you like them, you can watch them.
Mm-hmm. Glenn Powell, our Elvis, if you will.
Yeah.
All right. So our next letter is from Steven, and he goes, after your recent Gamera episode, I watched Gamera vs. Gearon with my 4-year-old son, and it was a delight. He was practically vibrating with excitement by the time it was over, and he went through such extremes of fear when a boy was going to get his brains eaten, and joy when the boy didn't get his brains eaten because Gamera showed up. Thanks so much for convincing me to give these a go. I'm really looking forward to watching more with him. How old would you think would be the right age to show a child Gamera? 4 years old?
4 years old,
yeah,
sure.
That's about right.
Yeah, I mean, the scenes of Gamera getting cut and bleeding.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And that scene that he was talking about, the kid about to get his brains eaten, the woman holds the like buzzsaw right close to the kid's brain.
It's hard for me to know in my old age, like what is too scary for a 4-year-old, because 4-year-olds also like scary stuff.
They want to be scared, as we say all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's like a weird push and pull. And, you know, as a parent, you don't want to show something to a kid either that will give them nightmares, because that's a nightmare scenario for the parent.
Cannibal Ferox.
That's
show
right.
them that.
Just completely desensitize them from any violence so they'll never have nightmares again.
I bring up that movie Cannibal Ferox because I saw it for the first time when I was like 16, and it horrified me.
Really?
Like, I was 16. I was not a spring chicken.
And no one is giving you any context for this other than like through books. So
I had never, I didn't really even know what an Italian cannibal movie was. Now, of course, I can watch it.
You just I'm dull face. You've seen everything.
Yeah, completely sick. You know, I need to go out and, you know, just murder drifters to get that kind of thrill now.
You need that like real life dash cam footage that you're watching online.
That's right.
So again, thanks for all the letters. You can send them to us at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. This week on our Patreon, people have been asking. They're like, Justin, Will, we need the secret. What do you get when you look for movie-related things?
So we're gonna take you on a shopping tour. Mm-hmm. We're gonna tell you how to buy film books.
You're looking at the used bookstore and you're going, oh, is this book of stills from Frankenstein something that I should be purchasing?
Say, no, get it out of here.
Toss it in the garbage. So get your pad and paper out, because that's what we're doing on the Patreon this week. Next week, we love the Finch Man, right?
You folks have been very patient for us. As we've done episodes on Bruce Lee, we've done episodes
Elvis.
on
People love Elvis.
People like Elvis. Our New York vacation, you know, stuff like that. But I really think you guys are entitled. We did an episode about Toronto, guys we know in Toronto.
We got more mail from that and the New York one than we've received like in anything ever.
Yeah, but we're gonna go broad for the next one. You guys are entitled to an episode.
Get some safe thoughts you've heard before.
You're entitled to an episode about a big filmmaker who you know and like. So how about David Fincher?
Why not?
We've never done him.
We talked about him briefly. I think we did Zodiac once.
Which I saw again recently.
Yeah, we talked about Fight Club when we did an episode on 1999.
So what should we talk about?
The Game.
Yeah, The Game.
Panic Room.
Let's talk about Panic Room.
Yeah.
And Social Network.
Social Network. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not watching Benjamin Button again.
Can I tell you something? I have never seen the game.
Really?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay.
That's what I remember from it. I look at David Fincher's filmography and I'm like, I've seen all of these movies. Nothing excites me there in the way that I want it to excite me. You know what? It's almost like hermetically sealed, like he is as a filmmaker himself.
What if
we did an episode right when the pandemic was hitting on Mank.
Did we do a Mank episode?
We did do a Mank episode.
Yeah, I'll
watch Mank again.
Yeah. What if Stanley Kubrick only made movies based on airport paperbacks?
Yeah. I mean,
which is not necessarily a knock.
I would prefer. Did you watch Mank again and you were kinder to it? I feel like I heard you say that.
No, I haven't seen it a second time, but I also think I don't know. I don't know what I think about Mank. I never think about Mank. Why would I?
I think we were pretty vocal about it when we did it at the time. I was like, it looks like iPhone footage and there's real changes in the corner.
And the dishonor done to the memory of Orson Welles.
Nah, I don't care about that. What I do care about is the fact that a character is like, Mank, you may be difficult, but you're never boring. And I'm sitting there watching the movie going like, well, that's not true because I'm watching this movie.
I mean, I think Gary Oldman was a horrible, unpleasant presence through the whole film.
Not all movies need to have a likable protagonist.
Oh, yeah. How about a watchable protagonist?
All right. So on that note, what we're doing next week is David Fincher, The Game, Panic Room. I remember articles when Panic Room was coming out where David Fincher was like, I'm going to show you camera moves you've never seen before.
I remember some of them. And hey, Social Network.
Good movie.
Good movie. Can't wait to watch it again.
I watched The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo in the last month and I didn't log it on Letterboxd.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, did I watch it then? Such is the question of our times. So until next week, my name is Justin DeClue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. Hello. As per usual, I would like to thank some of our new patrons, who include Greg, Norman Turok Jr., JD, Alex, Sean, Brian, Jim Vance, Jason Hoff, Michael Winsky, Jim Vance, Andrew V, Rex, Tristan Kleinfelter, Jacob Sanders, Michael Van Vliet, Hobgoblin O'Brien, and Jay Jeffrey. Thank you very much for becoming patrons. We could not keep doing this without you.
Justin, the balance of power has shifted in the DC universe.
Oh my God.
The Black Adam train is a Roland. That's right.
That's right. I have documents in my hand right here that prove that Black Adam has gone into profit. Don't believe what other people are telling you right now.
I'm here in my car and we're looking at the numbers and we're loving the success. We're loving the fans. The fans love Black Adam. The numbers are great. Overseas, you'd love to see him be better. Of course, you always want to be better. But, Black Adam 2, Black Adam 3, are they going to happen, Justin?
So as you can tell, we're doing spot-on imitations of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because an article recently came out that it's funny because it felt like reading it, I was hoping for some massive revelations. And they were mostly like, The Rock is very late to work. And on some sets, not the newest movie, he would pee in bottles and force PAs to throw it out. Really Jim Belushi it, if you will.
It was an article in, I believe, The Wrap.
Yeah, The Wrap.
Called How Dwayne Johnson's $250 million Red One Went Off Track. And the article alleges that his unprofessional behavior led to a $50 million
that is wild
over budget.
Now, to be on the positive side, some of the crew members said we were on set for so long, we got health benefits out of it because we crossed over into the minimum we needed to qualify for that.
So there are different kinds of articles. Sometimes an article comes out that's the cancellation article, the hammer dropping, there's no coming back from this. The 7 people have come out with misconduct allegations article. This is not one of those articles.
No.
This is a
point and laugh at the Rock article.
Yeah, because, you either die a hero, you either die the more sympathetic character in the Vin Diesel feud, or...
I mean, Vin Diesel, bad man.
Is he a bad man?
Oh, yeah, some articles, some lawsuits that came out about this stuff.
Oh, okay.
But, in that feud between The Rock and Vin Diesel, there was clearly a winner. Now, I know for a fact, Vin Diesel is famous for being late on set as well. But I will say, the set he was late to, Riddick films, he was paying for himself. Okay. So, it's very frustrating for the people that are there waiting. But if it's coming out of his own pocket and people are being paid, do you know there's a Riddick film shooting right now?
Really?
I'm not even kidding.
With Vin.
With Vin.
Okay.
Directed by David Towie. He opened that prison gate and he let David out, who only gets to direct Riddick films now.
I love it. It's like the Before series. You know, every 10 years there's a new one.
That nobody really wants, except for me and Peter Kaplowski.
Yeah.
But we'll be there for it. Anyway, going back to The Rock. Yeah, in that feud, everyone took The Rock's side. Because we're like, Vin sucks. Of course, he's difficult. No one on the Fast and the Furious movies like working with him, to the point that he is alone in all the scenes.
Yeah, which complicates the Fast and the Furious series emphasis on family,
Yes,
I would say.
That the lead of the film is CGI'd into the family dinners, basically.
But yeah, during that feud, I recall Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would constantly emphasize, his poor work ethic and how, The Rock, and The Rock does he comes across as like a real type A, like career-oriented, more brand than man.
Like there's articles out there of like, he'll remember everybody's name. So if he sees them, he can talk about like, hey, how's your mom doing? Even though he only talked to this person 6 months ago. Like that's what makes him likable. Now, what could be going on? Are we dealing with like The Rock's going to come out and be like, I have cancer or something like that? And that's what's been keeping me late.
Well, I hope that's not the case.
Me too. I hope it's just because like he's working out too hard. How do you arrive 8 hours late to something?
There's been an interesting heel turn with him because a few weeks ago, there was also that interview where he said, I regret my endorsement for Joe Biden. It was divisive.
Really? He did say that?
Yeah. Now, mind you.
Because did he come out because he's like, I don't like what's happening in Palestine?
Viva Palestina. No, he did not say that. He has not commented on that issue.
So basically, he's doubled down on like, I need to be a bland, unthreatening figure so I can continue to be a gigantic star.
Yes, which I think that's not what we want.
That's not what we want.
We want a return of Southland Tales, Dwayne Johnson, right?
Yes. And it was hinted at because remember he's doing the
one of the Safdie's
brothers movies.
Yeah.
Because The Rock, we've discussed him on this podcast before. He's just bland and boring now. Boring, just tofu up on screen, no flavoring, nothing. I like tofu, but you got to flavor that a little bit with something. Does this change his past? This embarrassing article. Like
I welcome this article actually
too.
Because I think it just adds some texture to him, some much needed texture. I want to like I'd love it if he would be like a cool guy who made good movies.
Yeah.
But in lieu of that, I'll take an asshole with like.
I want to take The Rock aside and be like, Mr. Johnson, The Rock, if you will. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Like, what is satisfaction in life for you?
Yeah.
Like, you have everything. You are millionaire, million times over. Like, what do you want? You just want everybody to know your name. They do. You've won.
He wants to be number one.
Yeah. You're number one.
For its own sake, he wants to be number one.
Like, wouldn't you want to do something interesting? Do you want to be goddamn Elvis Presley's movie career and have all these boring movies nobody watches?
He wants to be number one, and when you've had a taste of number one, it's hard to let it go.
But it's just sugar, though. It's
I know.
Filled with calories. It's nothing long-lasting. It will only make him feel sick.
Tom Cruise has an interesting career because when he was number one in the 90s, he would mix it up.
Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson. Interesting films by interesting filmmakers. And then when it started to go away from him, he was like, okay, I can't do that anymore, but what I can do is like hang on the side of a plane.
Yeah, basically trying to kill myself.
So then he did that, and he was number one again, for God's sake. And even to that, I would say like you don't need that.
Christopher McQuarrie in his 16-hour Empire interview said that like he has a really violent script he wants to make with Tom Cruise, like a dark violent script. Those are hard to get made, and it's like it shouldn't be.
Tom
if
could
Tom
get it
wanted
made.
to do it, he would get it made.
Yeah.
Period. That's what it comes down to. And I feel like The Rock, if he really wanted one of those things, he could do it too. Like, why not?
Yeah.
And I wonder if he will continue to piss and pot. This will never go away, though, right? Like the peeing in bottles is one of those things that like will haunt The Rock for basically the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Like the 8 hours late, that's funny. And it makes you wonder, like, why?
Yeah.
But, Mr. Tequila, oh, God. Just why? I don't understand.
I want to see him lean more into this, though. If he's going to do a heel turn, I want him to really do a heel turn.
He showed up 3 hours late to WrestleMania.
I want him to become Joaquin Phoenix all of a sudden, like become a weird, twitchy, like I'm not here era Joaquin Phoenix.
Wait, so he's like very aggressive and confrontational during interviews?
Yeah, like start a rap career. Like I wanted to see him go completely off the rails.
Yeah, what would be the ultimate Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie. I guess like a Safdie brother movie.
I'd like to see him do his equivalent of Kinski's Paganini.
Oh my God. I like to say, what? Paul Thomas, throw the rock a bone. Why not?
Yeah.